The moment she stepped through the door, I knew she was lying. Not because she stammered. Not because she acted suspicious. No, Julia smiled. That wide, practiced, I've got nothing to hide smile she only wore when she had everything to hide. Hey, babe, she called out like it was any other Tuesday. You would have laughed. The new instructor at the gym is a total maniac. We were doing mountain climbers for like 10 minutes straight. I looked up from the couch, remote resting in my hand, the TV flickering in the background with some late-night rerun I wasn't watching. She was glowing. Not from sweat. From performance. Hair perfect. Makeup untouched. Not a drop of exertion clinging to her. And her gym bag, untouched by the door, right where it had been all evening. But I said nothing. Smells like you ordered Thai, she said, bending to pull off her shoes. Let me guess. Extra peanuts on the pad Thai and no chili flakes. She winked. Still, I didn't answer. Just watched her, every move, every word. Letting her fill the room with noise while I listened to everything she wasn't saying. She walked into the kitchen like she owned the silence. Don't look at me like that, she said, laughing lightly as she opened the fridge. I know you think I'm obsessed with this new gym routine. But hey, a girl's got to keep it tight, right? That's when I tilted my head, just a little. Like I was thinking. Like I was curious. But I wasn't. I was collecting. Every word, every motion, every casual glance she threw over her shoulder. It all felt like a script she'd rehearsed in her car, checking lines in the rearview. I swear, it's like, the more I go, the more energy I have. You should come with me sometime. My eyes flicked to the gym bag again. Unspoken. Undisturbed. I didn't even nod. Just blinked. Breathed. Let the silence stretch. She finally grabbed a fork and joined me on the couch, picking through the leftovers like she'd earned it. You always know what to order. That fake domestic sweetness used to fool me. I used to take these moments, the food, the couch, her warm body close, as proof we were okay. Not anymore. Now, it felt like camouflage, a false calm draped over something slowly, steadily rotting. You're quiet, she said after a while, chewing slowly. Everything okay? I turned to her, met her eyes, and smiled. Yeah, I said softly. Everything's fine. And that was the first lie I told her, because everything had already started unraveling, and she didn't even feel the thread slipping. I'm Noah, 33. I write back-end code for an accounting firm. I live in polos and hoodies. I don't make waves, but I see everything. Our house was modest, stucco exterior, sun-faded shutters, dusty green lawn. We weren't flashy. We were the couple who remembered birthdays, argued over streaming subscriptions, made grocery lists, and stuck to them. And for a long time, I thought that meant we were safe. Then Julia started changing her schedule. A new gym membership, a new routine, a new scent I didn't recognize on her skin when she came home late. But still, I didn't ask. I didn't accuse. I waited. Because sometimes, silence isn't surrender. It's surveillance. And I wasn't planning to confront her. Not yet. I was planning to watch her unravel herself. You'd be amazed at how much truth slips through the cracks when you stop filling the silence. I didn't ask where she was going the next day, just nodded when she grabbed her keys and kissed my cheek, announcing, boot camp again, back by 8. Her tone was cheerful, borderline rehearsed, like she'd practiced it in the mirror. So I just smiled and said, have fun. Then I watched her drive away. 5 minutes later, I slipped on a hoodie, grabbed my keys, and followed. I didn't tail her like a movie detective. No sunglasses or stealth. Just enough distance to see where she went. And there it was, the gym. She pulled in, parked, walked through the front doors like she belonged. A regular. I waited across the street, engine idling, fingers tapping the steering wheel. After 20 minutes, I drove home. That night, she came back glowing. We did circuit training today. I'm going to feel it tomorrow, she groaned, stretching her arms above her head, subtly showcasing her toned stomach. I nodded. Nice. The next day? Same drill. Day after that. Rinse, repeat. Julia was, by all appearances, a model of health and dedication. The gym knew her. Staff waved. She scanned in. Worked out. Left. But something still itched at the edge of my mind. Not about where she was going, but why she was going so much. There was a rhythm to it, too polished. Like clockwork. She left always around the same time, wore the same outfit rotation, gave me the same breezy goodbye. Always back before 8. Then Thursday rolled around. I didn't follow her this time. I stayed home, laid on the couch, stared at the ceiling fan. Half an hour after she left, I checked the bag. Still empty. No towel. No change of clothes. Not even a half-used stick of deodorant. Just a water bottle and a folded flyer from the gym's opening week. Pristine, unread. That night, she came home flushed again. You should have seen how packed it was. Everyone's jumping on this New Year fitness craze. I smiled. Makes sense. The next week passed in a blur of routine and quiet tension. Julia kept going to the gym, 6 out of 7 nights. Always the same lines. Always the same kiss at the door. But I'd stopped following her. Instead, I watched from inside. Every exit. Every entrance. The weight of her lies pressed heavier each time she crossed that threshold like nothing was wrong. And still, I said nothing. One night, as she brushed past me in a rush, fumbling with her keys, I caught her scent. Not sweat. Not even body spray. Cologne. Not mine. Something muskier, darker. Late? I asked casually, not even looking up from my book. She froze mid-motion. Yeah, she said after a beat. Class started 10 minutes ago. Then she was gone. I didn't move for a full minute. Just stared at the same word on the page I hadn't turned in 20 minutes. It wasn't proof, but it was enough. That night, I couldn't sleep. I laid in bed, eyes fixed on the ceiling fan. The blade spun like a slow metronome, keeping time with a new rhythm inside me. Calm, but deliberate. At 2:13 a.m., I picked up my phone. There was only one person I could call. Emma, Julia's younger sister. She'd always been around. Family barbecues, holidays, birthdays. Sweet girl, mid-20s, freshly graduated, still finding her footing. She used to smile easily around us. Lately, she avoided eye contact. I figured she knew something, and I was done pretending I didn't. It was a Wednesday night when I texted Emma. You free for coffee? Just want to talk. She replied in under a minute. Sure. Tomorrow night, okay? We agreed on a diner halfway between her apartment and mine. One of those retro spots with red vinyl booths and a jukebox that only played Elvis and Heartbreak. I got there first. Sat near the back. Quiet. Dim. I ordered coffee I wouldn't drink and stared out the window as the rain misted the glass. When she walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. Emma had always been light. Her laugh, her presence, the bounce in her step. But now she looked pale, her smile thin. She spotted me, hesitated, then came over and slid into the booth across from me. Noah, she said softly, like my name might crack if she spoke too loud. Thanks for coming, I replied, giving her a nod. She fidgeted with the paper napkin in front of her, folding it into tiny shapes. Her hands wouldn't stay still. I didn't rush her. We made small talk at first, about her new job, her apartment, the weather. Nothing important. But it felt like standing at the edge of a frozen lake, testing the ice. Finally, I said it. Emma, I need to ask you something. And I want the truth. Not the family version. The real one. Her fingers froze mid-fold. Her eyes lifted to mine. It's about Julia, I added, steady and low. Emma's throat moved as she swallowed. Okay, she whispered. I leaned forward slightly. Is she seeing someone? The napkin trembled in her hand. I don't need names, I said quickly. I'm not trying to trap you. I just want the truth. She stared at me like she was weighing something impossible. Her lower lip quivered. Noah, I didn't want to be in the middle. You already are, I said gently. And I think you hate it. Silence. The diner's jukebox clicked, and another dusty old love song hummed through the speakers. Emma took a shaky breath. I don't know who. I swear. But, yeah, she is. I nodded slowly, not moving, not blinking, just letting it land. I found out a few weeks ago, she said, voice barely audible. She was texting someone during a family dinner, real sneaky. Then later, I saw her outside, arguing on the phone. Said something like, you promised me Thursday nights. She didn't know I heard. I closed my eyes briefly. Emma looked panicked now. Please don't tell her I told you. She'd cut me off. She already doesn't trust me. I met her eyes. This stays between us. She nodded instantly, like she'd been waiting for that assurance all night. The waitress came by with the check, but neither of us reached for it. Emma wiped her eyes quickly with the sleeve of her jacket. You don't deserve this, she said softly. You're good to her. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. Sometimes being good just makes you easier to lie to. She winced, like the words hurt. I slid out of the booth and stood up. Thanks for the coffee, I said. Emma didn't speak. Just watched me walk away. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the pavement still shimmered under the streetlights. I got into my car, sat there for a moment, hands resting on the steering wheel. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel confused. I felt calm, resolved. I didn't need to chase her anymore. Because now, I knew exactly what I was dealing with. I didn't follow her that night. Didn't check her phone when she was in the shower. Didn't log into our shared cloud or skim through her browser history. I sat in bed, reading the same sentence in a book I didn't care about. I heard the water running, the soft pat of her feet on tile, the hum she always made when applying moisturizer. But none of it moved me anymore. When Julia finally slid into bed beside me, she whispered a cheerful, "Night," and turned off the light. And I said nothing. She drifted off in minutes. Her breathing slowed, rhythmic and soft. Peaceful, like the guilt hadn't touched her at all. I stared up at the ceiling. No tension in my jaw, no ache in my chest. Just stillness. It wasn't numbness. It was clarity. The next day, I didn't do what I used to. No pretending things were normal. No waiting for her to lie again. No scanning her eyes for cracks. Instead, I made a call to an old friend, Josh, who I hadn't seen in months. He ran a little bar downtown, tucked between a barber shop and a defunct music store. The kind of place with bad lighting, good whiskey, and zero pressure. "You alive?" he asked when I walked in, slapping me on the back. "Barely," I said. "Buy me a drink so I can fake it." We sat in the back, surrounded by chipped tables and the low hum of someone butchering classic rock on the jukebox. Josh didn't pry, just handed me a drink and nodded like he knew enough already. I didn't give him details. Didn't drag Julia's name into it. All I said was, "Been thinking about what happens when something you built starts falling apart and you realize you're not angry anymore." He looked at me sideways. "That sounds worse than anger." I laughed, not because it was funny, just because it was honest. We talked about everything but marriage. Old memories. Stupid college bets. The time we almost got arrested for sneaking into the pool at 3 a.m. I laughed harder than I had in weeks. And when I stepped out into the cool night, I didn't feel empty. I felt weightless. Julia was already asleep when I got home. At least, she pretended to be. She stirred a little as I walked in, her voice groggy. "You were out late." "Yeah," I said simply, pulling off my jacket. She paused. "With who?" "Josh," I replied, opening the closet, not even looking at her. Another beat of silence. Then, "You didn't tell me." I turned around, met her eyes. "You don't tell me a lot of things either." She blinked. Just once. Then turned her face to the wall, curling deeper under the covers. I laid beside her without touching her. No tension. No fireworks. Just silence. But this time it was mine. The law office was on the 6th floor of a narrow brick building downtown. The kind that had probably been repurposed from something older, something forgotten. Just like a lot of things in my life lately. I took the stairs. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to feel the weight in my legs. Maybe I didn't want to arrive too quickly. The receptionist greeted me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I gave my name. A few minutes later, I was sitting across from a man in a gray suit who looked like he'd seen too many marriages crumble to care anymore. "Mr. Carter," he said, extending a hand. "I'm Mitchell Green. I understand you're looking to file." I nodded. "I am." He didn't flinch. Just opened a file folder, pulled out a legal pad, and clicked his pen. "Tell me everything." And so I did. Not all at once. Not with fire or fury, but in pieces. Measured. Controlled. The gym story. The changed routines. The fake smiles. The conversation with Emma. I didn't embellish. I didn't dramatize. I just gave him the bones and let the silence between the words speak for the rest. When I was done, he leaned back, steepled his fingers, and studied me. "There's no concrete proof," he said plainly. "Nothing digital? No photos, texts, call logs? No. No suspicion of financial misconduct? Hidden accounts? Anything material? Nothing I can prove." He sighed through his nose. "So it's all circumstantial. I'm not trying to crucify her," I said. "I just want out. Quietly. Cleanly." He raised an eyebrow. Even split. "For now," I replied. "Just file the papers." He nodded. "I can draft them this week. You'll need to sign here." He slid the initial form across the desk. "To begin the petition." I didn't hesitate. Not even for a second. Pen met paper, and I signed my name with a stillness I hadn't felt in months. Noah Carter. Done. That sound. Pen on parchment, slow and final, was the loudest noise I'd heard all day. When I handed the folder back, Mitchell gave me a long look. "You're remarkably composed." I shrugged. "I already broke. This is just the rebuild." He smiled faintly at that. Not kindly. Not mockingly. Just knowingly. We shook hands. I took the elevator this time. When I stepped out into the sunlit sidewalk, I didn't feel liberated. Not yet. But I felt direction. The strange thing about grief is how it disguises itself as routine. I'd been living in the ruins, calling it home. Now, I was done dusting off broken furniture and pretending it still worked. Back at the house, I found Julia folding laundry on the bed, humming something tuneless. She glanced up when I walked in. "You were out early," she said. "Yeah." "With Josh again?" "No." She waited for me to offer more. I didn't. She held up one of my shirts. "Want this hung or folded?" "Doesn't matter," I said, brushing past her into the bathroom. The faucet ran. The mirror fogged. And for the first time in years, I didn't see a man trying to hold everything together. I saw someone letting go. She noticed it during dinner. It wasn't what I said, it was what I didn't. The way I passed the salt without looking up. The way I chewed slowly, as if tasting something for the first time, but not caring if I liked it. Julia set her fork down halfway through her salad. "You're different." I didn't glance up. "How so?" "You're distant." I wiped my mouth with the cloth napkin. "I'm tired." She scoffed, like that word wasn't good enough. "Tired of what?" I finally looked at her. Everything. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was surgical, clean, like a scalpel cutting through the last fibers of a conversation we used to know how to have. She shifted in her seat. "Are we really doing this? The cold shoulder game?" "This isn't a game," I said. "Not to me." I stood, collected the plates, and walked them to the sink. She didn't move, just sat there, blinking slowly like someone trying to wake up from a dream. Later, she followed me into the living room. "You haven't touched me in over a week." I didn't look away from the TV. "You haven't spoken to me honestly in over a month." Her arms folded, jaw tight. "This thing you're doing, this act, it's not you." I turned the volume down. "You don't get to tell me who I am anymore." She looked stunned, like those words had reached a part of her she didn't know was still vulnerable. "I don't know what happened," she whispered. "No." I turned to face her fully now. "Because I think you do. I think you've known for a long time. But you assumed I'd stay quiet forever." Her lips parted, but nothing came out. I stood, walked past her, and headed to the bedroom. She followed. "I made mistakes, okay?" she said behind me. "But we've both been off lately. Maybe we can still fix this." I turned at the doorway, holding the frame with one hand. "You're not scared of losing me. You're scared of losing control of me." Her mouth opened again, a sharp inhale, but no denial came. We stared at each other across the hallway. "You don't mean that," she said finally. "I didn't," I replied. "But I do now." I shut the door. She didn't knock. The next morning was quieter than usual. No morning banter, no questions about the day ahead. Just 2 mugs of coffee made in silence, the clink of spoons the only sound in the kitchen. When she handed me mine, I didn't say thank you. She didn't ask why. At the door, I paused to grab my keys. Julia stood behind me in her robe, arms crossed. "Will you be home late again?" "Probably." She tilted her head. "Another Josh night?" I looked at her, long enough to let the pause speak louder than any lie. Then, "Maybe." And I walked out. No kiss. No goodbye. Just the sound of the lock clicking into place, and her breath catching as she stood there alone, realizing the worst part wasn't that I was leaving. It was that she no longer had the power to stop me. She didn't leave the house that evening, or the next. By day 3, her excuses started stacking up like unread mail. "I've got a headache. I think I'm catching something. Too tired tonight. Maybe tomorrow." She still wore her gym leggings. Still put her hair up like she was heading out. But the front door stayed shut, and I stopped asking. The silence between us thickened. It wasn't tension anymore, not the kind that begged for a release. It was something else entirely. Surrender. She moved slower through the house, kept checking her phone when she thought I wasn't looking, set it face down every time I walked by. Her smile, once weaponized, had dulled, muted, almost scared. One night, as I stood at the sink washing dishes, she appeared behind me, pretending to grab a glass. "You've been off," she said carefully, eyes on the cupboard. I rinsed a plate. "So have you." She didn't push further, just filled the glass halfway, drank it slowly, and left the room. But I saw the way her hands shook. Later that night, I sat alone at the edge of the bed. The house was dark except for a sliver of hallway light leaking in through the crack under the door. Her side of the bed was empty. She'd fallen asleep on the couch again, or pretended to. It had been nearly 2 weeks since the diner conversation with Emma. I hadn't spoken to her since. But the way Julia had suddenly stopped going to the gym didn't feel like coincidence. It felt like reaction. So I called Emma again. She answered on the second ring. Noah? I need to ask you something, I said. And I need you to be honest with me. Fully this time. She sighed on the other end. I figured this was coming. Did you tell her we talked? A long pause. I didn't mean to, she said, voice tight with regret. She kept pressing me. Said she could tell something was wrong. She caught me flinching when she mentioned you. I didn't even say anything specific, but she knew. My jaw clenched. And now, Emma's voice grew quiet. She said it's over. The affair. She told me 2 days ago. Swore she ended it. Just like that. I think she's scared, Noah. Not of losing you. Of you not reacting. Of you not caring. I exhaled slowly. She's right to be scared. Emma hesitated. I'm sorry. I know. She started to say something else, but I hung up. There wasn't anything left to hear. I sat in the dark for a long time, phone resting in my palm. Somewhere in the hallway, a floorboard creaked. I didn't look up. When I finally crawled under the covers, she wasn't there. And for once, I didn't feel the absence. I felt the alignment. She wasn't where she wanted to be, and I wasn't where she expected me to be. That was the new equation. In the morning, Julia was back to making breakfast, pancakes, like she used to. She hummed a soft tune, one I recognized from the early days, before everything soured. She brought a plate to the table, set it in front of me, then smiled like we were some suburban painting come to life. But I didn't touch the food. You're not hungry? She asked, pretending her voice wasn't brittle. I looked at her flatly. You don't have to pretend anymore. She blinked. What's that supposed to mean? You already know I know. So stop trying to win me back with butter and syrup. Her smile collapsed. You haven't said anything, she snapped. And you haven't denied anything. We stared at each other across the table. For a moment, I almost felt bad for how pale she looked, how tight her grip was on the fork she hadn't used. But then I remembered. She was only pale because the power she once held was finally out of her hands. You ended it? I asked. Her jaw tightened. Yes. Because you regret it? She opened her mouth. I raised a hand. Wait. Let me rephrase. Did you end it because you realized what you did was wrong? Or because you realized you don't control me anymore? She didn't answer. Didn't need to. I stood, walked past her, and grabbed my coat. I'm not playing house anymore, I said as I opened the door. Noah, she called after me. Please, just talk to me. I looked over my shoulder. Calm. Cold. We're past talking. And I left her there, standing in the doorway, still holding a fork she never used, and a lie she could no longer manage. The next morning, she brought me breakfast in bed. Scrambled eggs, toast, strawberries, everything arranged with care. She even sprinkled cinnamon on the coffee, the way I used to like it. I stared at the tray, then at her. Julia stood there with a brightness in her eyes that didn't match the weight in the room. Thought I'd surprise you. I didn't move. You did. She forced a smile. You haven't eaten properly in days. I figured. I cut her off with a look. Cold. Measured. Why the sudden concern? Her smile faltered. Because I care. I always have. I finally sat up, letting the blanket fall. Then maybe you should have remembered that before climbing into someone else's routine. Her mouth opened, but I could already see the fight rising in her throat. That's not fair, she said sharply. What isn't? I asked, swinging my legs over the side of the bed. That I finally see things clearly? She crossed her arms. You're acting like I'm the only one who ever did anything wrong. I laughed, a single, humorless breath. I didn't cheat on you, Julia. Let's not rewrite history. You emotionally checked out long before I did anything physical, she snapped. You stopped paying attention. You were always working. Always quiet. So that gave you permission? No, she barked. It gave me reasons. I stood now fully, facing her. Then say it. Say you chose to cheat because I didn't clap loud enough when you entered the room. She flinched, then stepped forward. I made a mistake, but I ended it. I'm trying to fix things. You're trying to manage things, I said, voice low. You're not sorry. You're scared. That's not true. You're terrified that I don't need you anymore. That I'm not fighting you. That I'm not even angry. Her eyes shimmered now, but no tears fell. I am sorry. I stepped closer. And I believe you're sorry. That I caught on. She turned away, hands pressed to her face, pacing the room like she was trying to trap the pieces before they fell apart. This doesn't have to be the end, she muttered. We can work through this. People do it all the time. I watched her with a calm she clearly couldn't understand. You don't get it, I said, sitting on the edge of the bed again. This is the end. You're just the last one to notice. She spun around, fury lighting her face. You think this makes you righteous? You, walking around like some saint while I break down trying to salvage something? No, I said evenly. I think this makes me done. The room went still. Her chest heaved with shallow breaths. The tray of breakfast sat untouched on the bed between us. Eggs going cold, strawberries already softening. You're punishing me, she said suddenly. That's what this is. You want me to suffer. I stood, walked to the dresser, and opened the drawer. Calm hands. Focused. I want you to feel the silence you handed me for months, I said. The same silence I drowned in while you played pretend. She stepped closer again, reaching for my arm. You don't mean it. You're just hurt. I pulled away. I'm not hurt, Julia. I've healed. That's what you can't stand. Her expression twisted, shifting between disbelief and desperation. So what now? You just walk away? No, I said quietly. You will. That cracked her. You're unbelievable, she hissed, voice shaking. You act like you've been the victim this whole time, but you're cold. You're cruel. No, I said again. I'm just not in love with you anymore. And the second those words hit the air, I saw something in her break. Not the dramatic collapse she wanted me to react to. Not a storm of apologies or tears. Just the truth. That her grip on this narrative was gone. That I wasn't playing anymore. We stood there in silence. Two people on opposite sides of something we couldn't rebuild. Then, without a word, she turned and left the room. Her footsteps echoed down the hallway. A door slammed. And I sat down beside the untouched tray, took one sip of the cinnamon coffee, then dumped the rest in the sink. That night, she tried one last card. I was sitting on the couch, flipping through channels without watching anything, when I heard her footsteps behind me, slow, deliberate. I didn't turn. Then her hand touched my shoulder, light, fingers brushing down my arm. I felt her lean in, the scent of her perfume, the same one she wore on our first anniversary, floating around me like some desperate memory. You remember this? She whispered, voice soft, almost girlish. You used to love when I wore this. I didn't answer. She moved around the couch, lowering herself beside me, too close, her knees touching mine. She placed her hand on my thigh, ran it up slowly, and smiled. I miss us, she said. I miss the way you looked at me. I looked at her now, but it wasn't the way she meant. It was the kind of look you give a door you're about to walk through and never open again. Her smile faded just a bit. Don't you miss it too? I stood, just like that. No warning. Took a step back. I don't, I said plainly. Her expression cracked. What do you mean? I said slowly. You don't attract me anymore. It landed like a slap. Her breath caught. Excuse me. I met her eyes. Calm. Clear. There's nothing in you that draws me now. Not physically. Not emotionally. You've hollowed it all out. She stood, too, fire rushing back into her face. How dare you? I tilted my head. Funny. You didn't ask that when you were lying to me every night. She stepped closer, eyes wild. I made mistakes. But I was trying. No, I cut in. You were performing. And now the stage is empty, and you don't know who you are without an audience. That did it. Her hand shot out, shoving me hard in the chest. You're cruel, she hissed. Colder than I ever was. I didn't move. Didn't raise my voice. You lost me a long time ago, Julia, I said. This is just the moment you noticed. We didn't speak for the rest of the night. She slept in the guest room. And I didn't feel a single thing when I heard her sobbing into the pillow. 2 days passed. No small talk. No more soft pleas or half-hearted attempts at repair. Just two people circling the wreckage of something long dead, pretending not to smell the smoke. It was a Saturday morning, bright, warm, peaceful. One of those early fall days where the light makes everything look kinder than it really is. I was in the kitchen, buttering toast, coffee brewing quietly behind me, when she walked in. Her face was set, lipstick too red, eyes too dry. She dropped a stack of papers on the table with a loud slap. I'm done playing games, she said. I turned slowly, glanced at the title page. Petition for divorce. Her name. Her signature. She crossed her arms like she was ready for a battle. You think you're the only one who can end things? She said, voice tight. Fine. You want cold? I can be cold. I studied her face, the shake in her jaw, the way her left eye twitched. This wasn't strength. It was a mask. A brittle, last-ditch swing to reclaim power she no longer had. I picked up the papers, flipped through them. Well, I said calmly, at least we're finally honest. That rattled her. You're not even surprised? No. Her voice rose. You really think you're just going to walk away, and I'm going to let you? That I'll make this easy? I don't need it to be easy, I said, folding the papers neatly and setting them down. I just need it to be done. She looked stunned. This was supposed to shake you. I gave a small, hollow smile. You've already taken everything you could. There's nothing left to shake. That was when her face changed. The performance cracked. Her hands trembled slightly. It wasn't supposed to get this far. I thought, what? I asked. That I'd beg you to stay? Cry? Break? Her voice dropped. That you'd fight for me. I shook my head. I fought. Quietly. For months. While you were slipping away piece by piece. I fought for this marriage every time I let something slide. Every time I trusted your lies. Every time I stayed silent and swallowed my doubt. She stepped forward. And now you just give up? No, I said. I'm just finally matching your effort. She blinked fast, as if trying to stop tears from rising. But I wasn't done. I walked to the cabinet, pulled out a second stack of papers, my own. Already signed, stamped, ready. I placed them beside hers. She stared, mouth open. I've been ready, I said softly. That silence, it stretched long. Longer than either of us could stand. Then she snapped. Her hand reached out, sweeping both stacks of paper to the floor. This was never real to you, was it? She screamed. You're enjoying this. Watching me fall apart. I didn't flinch. No. I just stopped pretending I didn't see it happening. She dropped to her knees, started grabbing pages, tearing them apart with shaking hands. This was supposed to be a warning, she sobbed. Not a real thing. I didn't mean it. I crouched, picked up one page she'd missed. My signature's still clean across the bottom. You keep thinking everything is a performance, I said quietly. That every move is a bluff. But not this time. She looked up at me, makeup streaked, chest heaving. I don't want to lose you, she whispered. You already did, I replied. You just didn't feel it until now. I stood and left her on the floor, surrounded by torn paper and the sound of her own breathing. She didn't follow me, didn't scream again. She just sat there, finally still, finally realizing the one thing she never thought possible. I had stopped waiting, and I wasn't coming back. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Neutral tones, tired chairs, fluorescent lights that made everything feel clinical. Julia sat 2 rows ahead of me, flanked by her lawyer. She hadn't looked back once. She wore gray. Not black, not white, just gray. As if she couldn't decide how to paint herself anymore. Emma was already seated at the witness stand when I entered. She looked nervous, fidgeting with her bracelet, glancing at the judge, then at me. When our eyes met, I gave her the smallest nod. It was enough. She took a breath and began. I wasn't trying to ruin anything, she said quietly. I didn't want to be in the middle. But Julia, she told me things. Slipped up. The lawyer asked for clarification. Emma glanced at her sister. She was having an affair. I didn't know who with, but she told me she had someone else who understood her. I tried to stay out of it, but I saw how it was affecting Noah. There was a hush in the room, the kind that doesn't need volume to feel deafening. Julia didn't interrupt, didn't flinch, just stared straight ahead, lips pursed, as if she could will herself into another reality. The judge thanked Emma, dismissed her gently. And just like that, it was official. The proceedings moved quickly after that. No assets contested. No children. No fights over who got the couch or the dining set. Just signatures. Stamps. Formal acknowledgments of an ending that had been slow burning for far too long. When it was over, I stepped out into the late afternoon sun. The city felt louder, brighter, more alive. And there I was, not broken, not bitter, just free. I walked a few blocks to a small bookstore cafe I used to visit during college. Still smelled like paper and cinnamon. Still had that crooked stool near the window nobody ever took. I sat there, coffee in hand, watching people drift past on the sidewalk, parents with strollers, college kids with earbuds, a man walking 3 dogs at once. None of them knew what I'd just walked away from. None of them knew I'd survived a woman who had once made me believe I wasn't enough, only to later discover she was the one drowning. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clean. That's all I ever wanted. A quiet ending. A sharp line drawn in permanent ink. A truth that didn't need to scream to be real. Somewhere behind me, my phone buzzed. I didn't check it. Could have been anyone. Could have been her. Didn't matter. I took another sip of coffee, the kind of slow, satisfying sip that comes when nothing's chasing you anymore. And for the first time in a long, long time, I didn't owe anyone an explanation.